Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to themanthatcanproject.com to find out more. Today's guest is Dr. Patrick Porter. Now, Patrick is the founder and creator of Braintap, which is an incredible device that is quick and easy, or it is a quick and easy way for you to relax, reboot, and revitalize by simply optimizing your brain's peak potential anywhere, anytime. And it's backed by neuroscience and research. And, brain tapping is essentially a guided meditation, which is proven to help people who experience high stress, which is me, difficulty sleeping, struggle with that from time to time, low energy, and other lifestyle challenges. Now, throughout this conversation with Patrick, we speak about many things, around the science behind the brain tapping, how he, began his journey into the science of calming the brain at age 12, which is pretty cool. And I've got a similar story which I share where I can relate to that. We also talk about, why he believes in visualization and the power of it to create a life that you want, and how it can really help you feel calm and controlled, and just all of the different programs that are available to help different aspects and areas of your life. And for me, have been obsessed, and I'm so excited to share this episode as he really dives into the science about helping your brain go through the different waves and really calm yourself. And, since I've been utilizing it, I've always experienced it, but now I can sort of really understand it a heap better. So tune into this episode. You'll find out who it's for, the vision for Braintap, and, the 4 elements around the binaural beats, guided visualization, the 10-cycle holographic music, and the isochronic tones, which is such a powerful tool. Now, if you're a first-time listener, make sure you hit the subscribe button, share this with someone that will get huge value from it. And men, if you aren't in the free Facebook group, head on over to Facebook, search the Man That Can Project, and join our community. It's incredible. And you can also grab yourself a 7-day free trial for our Inner Circle program, which has men from all around the world creating massive momentum in their life. There's so many incredible stories of men learning the tools and strategies and learning how to communicate better and really get an idea of who they want to become. And it's so exciting for me and very, very inspiring to see these men taking action on that and supporting each other through the brotherhood. So definitely get yourself the 7-day free trial from themanthatcanproject.com/inner circle 7-day free trial. Anyway, let's dive into the episode with Dr. Patrick Porter.
You're listening to the Man That Can Project with Lachie Stuart, a global movement created to empower men and open up what's really going through their minds by having real and raw conversations about life's unique challenges and our individual ways of processing it all. Welcome to the Man That Can Project.
Okay, welcome back, gents, to another episode of the Man That Can Project. And I've got a very, very, very exciting guest on the show today, Dr. Patrick Porter. Now, Dr. Patrick Porter, I've been using your product for over 18 months now, but really following your work and doing a lot of research around the stuff that you do, because I've had a similar experience to one that really sort of, put you into the space and got you very curious around the science of calming the brain when you were around 12 years of age. Your father taught you a relaxation method to you and 8 siblings. So you've got quite a big family, which is awesome. And then obviously, in the years after, you recorded your first visualization on a cassette. Now, for a lot of those who don't know what cassettes are, I do, because I grew up with them. They're things that we had way before CDs and everything like that. But you use that to record a visualization that helped you transform yourself from, a professed struggling student and storied troublemaker into a three-sport athlete, captain and honor roll student, which I think is incredible. And when I was reading that, I could definitely relate. I had a similar experience. My mum called it brain gym, but now I've sort of pieced it together.
Oh, yeah.
Visualization or somewhat of that. But that's also led you to founding and creating the Braintap, which is an incredible piece of equipment, which I look forward to hearing more about from you. And, we've got men all around the world that see me wearing this all the time. And I attribute it to a lot of the success that I've had and also being able to continue to develop and grow my mind. So, Patrick, thanks so much for your time. I understand you're a really busy man. I just noticed your Braintap on the sculpture behind us, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And welcome and thank you for your time. So I guess we'll dive straight into it. But for yourself, obviously, you're introduced to visualization at the age of 12. What sort of led you to really dive into that? Because I think as children or around that age, a lot of us get exposed to various things, but for you to really gravitate to that, what sort of made you go down that path then?
Yeah, I think the main thing was my dad was very smart. He didn't tell me he was going to teach me to get smarter. He said, you like playing football and baseball, and I was really into sports. He said, if you do this, you're going to get better. You're going to have an unfair advantage over your competition. And there was a book out called it was about mental processes behind the Iron Curtain. And he had me read a chapter of that where they're sports athletes in Russia. At the time, Russia had the top athletes, because basically once they showed a promise, that's all they did, but 25% of their practice was always visualization. And then, so that kind of got me, and I knew my dad, unfortunately, I like to tell people that I was blessed to be the son of an alcoholic, but, before he got help, I didn't think that, but he got help. And so when I would hear his voice in my head, I could never relax. I mean, we used to use what's called a GSR machine, a galvanic skin response. It's a biofeedback process. And you put your fingers on this device and you hear a beeping sound. And if you get to alpha, it stops. So one day what really came home to me was I was doing my mental practice with this machine and my dad walked in the room. It went beep, 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 started going off like bells. And he didn't say a word. The closer he got, the more it went off. So I knew, wow, there's something going on there, just energetically. And I asked him, I said, can you help me to design my own session for sports? And so I started doing it for, the main sports. We were really big with football, basketball. I was a wrestler because I wasn't very tall. In fact, I grew 6 inches one year in high school. And everybody's like, wow, but I was a wrestler because I could wrestle those little weights. And then by the time I was a senior, I was 185 pounds and, wrestling against, I did really well, but I went from wrestling 119 as a freshman to 185 as a senior and all muscle. And the whole thing was that I never missed a day meditating. I actually designed, they came out with an alarm clock during my high school years that actually had a cassette deck in it and you could put whatever messages you want on it. So my alarm, I always tell people setting your alarm is probably the worst thing you can do for your nervous system. But what I did was my alarm was actually gently waking me up with positive affirmations, getting me to change my mindset. I was so negative. I mean, I really thought that Sister Barbara's job was to ruin my life, or any other person at the school, because we grew up at the Catholic school. And then when I realized that I was the problem, they weren't the problem. Then, if somebody knew me from when I was younger to when I was in high school, they go, oh, everybody gets along with Patrick. He's such a nice guy. He does it. But that wasn't me when I was an angry young kid, that I really believe my brain was out of balance. And now that I've been working with kids so long, and also the food that I was eating about the same time, my mother started learning about health in food. And so we got rid of all the sugar out of the house. We got rid of all the dyes. And this was in the early 70s. So nobody was doing that, late 60s, early 70s. My friends thought I was crazy. In fact, there's a commercial over here in America with a guy named Ewell Gibbons who used to eat he used to do a thing for cereal called grape nuts. And he used to say you could eat pine cones. And he was like, everybody made fun of him. When I graduated, they said I was going to replace him in the grape nuts commercials, because I was like a crazy, and when I ran track, I used to take supplements before supplements were big. And my coach, because I was so fast, he said, don't ever let anybody see you taking those. They're going to think they're drugs. And I was never beat. My senior year, I was undefeated. So I had to take all my supplements, which was really brewer's yeast tablets. I did nothing like they have today. And because we were burning up our vitamin B, we learned, and we taking high doses of vitamin C and B because I ran the quarter mile. So, you know, you had to do those things. So I was biohacking before there was biohacking. And the main thing was that I taught my friends that, you know, they would, because they're going, what are you doing like before a football game or before a basketball game or wrestling or baseball? I would always go off by myself, sit down, do about a 5-minute, just get my stuff together, you know, mentally. I would visualize everything that I wanted. And pretty much, you know, on my level, I wasn't the level of like a superstar athlete. I did get a track scholarship, but I dislocated my shoulder in football, which ended that for me. I could have probably done it, but you know, once you lose those kind of limbs, you don't do it. But so I focused on my school, and I realized I could also get a scholarship for my grades, which I never would have thought about. I mean, I up until my junior year of high school, when colleges were contacting me to play sports for them, I never thought I was smart enough for college. And that shifted, and I think it all started because I took the time. We call it technology-driven meditation, because with the process my dad was a trainer of was called the Silva method, and they actually had sounds, and those sounds were called isochronic tones. And you played this in the room. So any message that I put on my tape recorder, I put the sound in the background. So it was really the very first generation of like the Braintap, but we only had sound at that time. We had no light.
Wow. It's incredible. Like, even so, that was around like the 70s, 80s, and all that sort of stuff. You were involved in meditation. Like where we are in Australia, I guess where I grew up, meditation was like, we just believed it was, you know, for hippies and stuff like that. But when I look back, my mum used to, she taught me to visualize. I used to be a track athlete as well, so visualize the race. And whenever I was doing that, I was on point. It wasn't until about 8 years after I retired from that I started realizing that you could implement it into other components of your life. And for me, when I came across the Braintap, it was actually Darren Bain, who's one of my mentors, and I ran some work out of his gym. He went over and saw you live in the States, must have been back in 2017, 2018. And he came back, he's like, mate, I think we've got about 8 of these headsets in the gym, because massive believers in it. So I just bought one for myself as well, because they're amazing. But when I put that on, there was all these other noises happening with it, and it really helped me focus like I've never focused before. I've been meditating for years. I still meditate without the Braintap from time to time, but I find it really challenging compared to when you put that on and it feels like you're in this safe environment where you can just fully relax and allow it to do its work. And I know you just mentioned then the isometric tones, was it? And that's one of the 4 elements.
Isochronic, yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess flying into that then with those 4 elements, like how did you, I guess, combine and sort of build off that platform to then putting in the lights, the binaural beats and all that sort of stuff? Because whenever people ask me, like, what is it, just shining lights in your eyes? I know there's a lot of science behind it, but I really struggle to answer it. I'm like, you just got to try it. So how did you?
Yeah. So let me kind of take you back a little bit. One thing is that think about our brain. It's a great processor of information. It doesn't really think. We think. The brain simply processes. So our eyes are right now, they say that our subconscious processes up to 400,000 pieces of information, but that's kind of a metaphysical concept because nobody's really proven that. But in science, we know that our eyes bring in 2,000 pieces of information every second, but it filters it all out. So we only actually identify 40 pieces. So to put it in perspective, you've probably been with somebody, and usually I say your spouse, or your girlfriend or whatever, because you'll be out in the kitchen and you'll say, where's that salt shaker? And she'll say, it's right there on the counter. No, it isn't. And they'll walk right out, right in front of you, there's the salt shaker. That's because our brain literally is always rendering our reality. It's not perceiving our reality. Our vision only takes about 20% of what's really there and interprets the rest. It's doing that all the time because reality happens, our world happens so quickly, our brain has to become adaptive. So, actually, we can measure this now through something called the P300. So we can measure our evoke response of our brain. Like when we see a piece of information, how quickly can we react to it? Those that react quickly become very good athletes. That's one of the ways we know that because they can react. Now, our ears, for instance, we take in 25,000 pieces of information every second. Now, again, we only act on 50 or less of those pieces because we'd go crazy if we processed everything. There's just too much going on. And so we don't even know what's here that we're not seeing. There's a lot more here. That's why when there's one of the things I tell people is we like to take the unseen and make it seen, because there's possibilities. In the quantum world, they call it the quantum sea. We live in this sea of possibilities. And once we open our mind, which is the software that works the hardware. So what we're doing is we're going to tune the hardware, which is the brain. Now, the reason it's important to do that is the brain uses light, sound, and vibration to process everything in the known universe. So when you say, how did I start out with this? Well, we were dealing with patients back in the 80s, and I was very fortunate. Could be a whole nother podcast or conversation about how I met the people, but it was very synchronicity. I believe in synchronicity. You start thinking something, people show up, they start giving you the things. Well, I was actually thinking I was going to get out of this business because you just don't make a lot of money being a therapist. And I went to school, and the way that when I was a therapist, let's say you came into me and you started crying about your money and you say, okay, just pay me $10. And you had to take that. It was like, you couldn't say, I'm not going to help you. You had to. And I worked for a group called the Arizona Health Council, and most of our money was funded from our state government. So I was not making a lot of money, and so I talked to this guy and I said, I just don't want to do this. He says, you need to meet these people. So long story short, I meet the people with a group called Light and Sound Research. And they happen to need a space, and I happen to have an office in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I said, you know what? Why don't you work in here? I have a degree in electronics. You need help with your electronics. So that's how we got together. And it was just really synchronicity. And what happened was we were building a clinical model. It was $10,000. And we couldn't get some things right. So they built me a little prototype. It was just a little tiny prototype. Our engineers did. And I took it back to my office and I started playing with it. I said, we need some money here because we're running out of money. We're making these in our back. There used to be a shop here called Radio Shack where you could buy all the electronic parts and build things. So we're in the back office building these little things. And I said, let's build 10 of them. I'll sell them and we'll see what happens. Well, I came back and they go, can you sell more? Because nobody has any money. And I said, yeah. Well, what happened was after 3 years, we go to the Consumer Electronics Show in 1989 here in the US, and we get voted the best new gadget of the year. Well, that blew everything up. I mean, that was just incredible because nobody had ever seen a device. This was in 89, remember? There were no CDs. There were no cell phones like we have today. There was no technology. And here we were putting these, it was just a headset and eyeglasses, more like, I'll show you, I did have it here. This is one of our prototype just glasses. This is a Light and Sound.
Wow.
This is just light. It's just glasses. So we don't sell this anymore. But this is something like this that we had. And then you wear your own earphones. So the first thing we did was retinal flashing. Now, the reason that's important is your eyes are closed, but we're attracting cranial nerve 2, which basically turns on that fight or flight maybe, or the relaxation brain, depending on what's going on. It's always, we're observing our environment. Is this a safe place? Like you said, you're putting it into a safe place. That's because we're using a frequency that's telling your nervous system, turn off sympathetic overload and turn on parasympathetic. What I like to call the thriving brain. We're turning off the survivor brain. And we're doing that through frequency because our body is always interpreting the frequencies around us. Best way to describe this is if you and I were on my spaceship and we're flying into Earth, and before we get there, I say, look, we can measure the Earth's frequency. The Earth has a frequency from 0.01 to 100. There's something else that has that same evoke response potential, the human brain. The planet has it, our brain has it. And what happens is we're symbiotic. So if we go to the ocean and we're sitting by the waves and we're just relaxing, we're going to start to feel good because we're going to turn on a brainwave called alpha. That in turn turns on the gut, which tells the gut to start to create more acetylcholine, which has us feeling good. It's the same if we fall in love. That's one of the main neurotransmitters that happens. So when people say, wow, I really love the ocean, they're basically getting a chemical reaction in their brain and they're associating it with the ocean. But we do that all the time. And believe it or not, that's a primitive reflex. 90% of all humans live within driving distance to a great body of water. And that's because we don't feel safe if we're not close to water. So our bodies are designed that way. So if we can use that same frequency now, the other thing we learned through this, now we can mimic that with flashing lights, and we learn that by, you've probably meditated at some point to a candle, right? You put a candle in front of you, you meditate, the candle's flickering. They call it a Jyoti meditation, and I'm fortunate that we're partners with some of the largest institutions in India where we get to go study meditation and get to work with gurus and people like that. And what we noticed was that candle actually flickers at 10 hertz frequency. Every flame does. So if you have a fire, like at night when people were sitting around the campfire and they're getting ready to sleep, they were literally training their brains to slow down, sitting by the fire. And then when they went to sleep, of course, the fire went out slowly. They go to sleep. Unlike today's people, right? People watch broadcast news. They're all fired up. And then they go to sleep and they can't calm down. So we need to do the same thing. So what we decided was, what if we could evoke that response using flickering light? Now that light is not flash, even though it looks like it's flashing at the same speed, it's not. It's just off. The brain is always fighting for balance. We live in a synchronizing universe. So one of the things I tell people is go to YouTube and type in synchronizing metronomes. And when you type in synchronizing metronomes, you're going to see a person put 200 metronomes out. They started them all at different times. Now, a metronome is a timing device typically used to learn to play the piano, but we also use that in brain training to train like the autistic brain to get more alpha and things like that. But what will happen is after 3 to 4 minutes, all the metronomes are synchronized. That also happens with grandfather clocks. Now, nobody knows why that happens. If you really want to blow away your left brain, logical, scientific friend, just have him watch that video. He won't believe it. He'll say, it's a gag, it's a gift. No, our universe is synchronized. Now, we have 2 hemispheres. If our 2 hemispheres are not balanced, we will have fear, frustration, anxiety, depression, every negative emotion. Because even a nanosecond in our brain, think of the speed of thought. The speed of thought is like this. I'm on Mars, I'm there. It's not like the speed of light, it's the speed of thought. So our brain and the way we think is very fast. And so when we think of a memory, like if I tell you, remember one of the races you won, one of the biggest races, you remember it, but what happened was at least 8 parts of your brain lit up because you had to reassemble it all. The brain packed it out into all the different areas of the brain holographically and then reassembles it. Now, when we get older, what I like to tell people, better looking and more intelligent with age, what happens is our brain starts to slow down this evoked potential. Now, that has to do with ATP production and all sorts of other mitochondrial health, but we need our brain to get light, right? We're designed actually to be outside 14 to 18 hours a day. That's the way our body's designed. We're no different today than we were 200,000 years ago. In fact, there's no evidence that shows we evolved from anything. We're the same as we were then to now. They have no idea how to explain it. But the difference is now we have cell phones, we have computers, we have cars, we have G5, all these things, and our body can handle those things with enough time to adapt and improvise because we're electrical systems. But right now it's causing a lot of problems. So light in the brain, your eyes are not just attached to your brain, your eyes are your brain. So when you look at somebody's eyes and you say, wow, you got beautiful eyes, you're really saying, wow, you got a beautiful brain there. But people with light color eyes, they bring in more light. Darker eyes bring in less light. So that's why we have the adjustments on the Braintap that you can have different intensities. But the more light, the better, because light doesn't have to be blue light or green light or red light or whatever color light, because a photon is a photon. And so our body, every cell of our body has something called chromophores. Think of a chromophore like a solar panel. Every cell has a receptor for light. The most underprescribed nutrient on earth is light, because without light, nothing else functions. So we want to get light into the brain. What's the next way to do it? So for years, actually over 27 years, I was creating different devices that had no ear lights like you see today. And then when lasers came out, lasers are pretty powerful, and I have a few of them in my clinic, and we use them all the time because they're very powerful. You know, the light frequencies and ones you can train. But I was watching my practitioners, they were using lasers in the ears. And I said, what are you doing? And he says, well, different meridians in the ears connect to different body parts. And if you can put light in there, it actually helps, like where the foot is. You can actually laser the ear and your foot feels better. And this is true in the whole body. So we have 2 ears, right? Also, so what I did some experimenting, and I said, wow, what if we dosed the ear with the equivalency of a 2-minute dose of laser light? How much time would that take in joules, which we need 4 joules of light? That's all your body can take. And then it'll just start rejecting. It'll basically reflect it back. So what we found out was a mixture of red and blue light, about 20 minutes, is the same dose as if you were getting a 2-minute dose on every meridian in your body for 2 minutes. So what we did was we took children who couldn't understand us. These were children on the autism spectrum. We said, put these earphones on, let's see what happens. Remember the 3 to 4 minutes of synchronization? Within 3 to 4 minutes, every kid was knocked out because their brain, what was happening with their brain was one hemisphere was actually faster than the other. That's why they can't communicate and they don't have alpha. So we designed our light to train their brains without their conscious minds knowing. It just basically responds just like sitting by the ocean or meditating in the mountains. In the mountains, you're at 7.8 hertz frequency, which happens to be theta, which is a deeper state. So we took this light and we said, what if we mirrored the light and the sound? What would happen? So what's happening in your left eye is actually happening as sound in your other ear and vice versa. It's going back and forth. The first 3 to 5 minutes of every Braintap session, and we have over 1,300 sessions, is a different way. They're all taking you to the same brain waves, but they're doing it differently to create something called neuroplasticity. And we have research paper after research paper. We're doing so much now. I believe that by next year, we'll have one of our studies that we're finalizing for those out there that worry about dementia. We took 5 women. They were 55 to 65 years old, all went to their medical doctor. They had dementia. They only did the Braintap for 6 weeks, 3 times a day. And they also had the brain scan that was bad. They had their left hemisphere was slowing down before their right. They took the cognitive test, everything lined up. This was our pilot study for a college we're working with here. At the end of 6 weeks, we sent them back to their doctors. Every one of their doctors said, if you would have came to me 6 weeks like this, I would never have diagnosed you with dementia. Their brain was balanced within 6 weeks. The cognitive skills test, they were no longer on the dementia scale. Everything lined up. They no longer had, quote, dementia, but the doctor couldn't change the diagnosis because there's no cure for dementia. So what happened was now they had no more of the symptoms, but the biggest thing was neuroplasticity, which means how much electricity or voltage do you have in your brain? The average was 49% after 6 weeks. What that means for those that don't know what neuroplasticity means is that their brain was able to organize around new concepts and new ideas. And think of brain speed like computer speed. We want faster computers, not slower. So our brain works better. And the nice thing is that we did a longer term with these 5. We're now doing a 40-person study with a group here called Seminole College. But as long as they were able to do 3 sessions a week, they maintained that. Now, the group that these 5, they're doing it every day because they don't want to lose what they've gained. It's kind of like working out. Once you get your body in shape, you don't want to lose that shape. You want to keep doing it. So, but the brain's the same way. It's not like it's fixed forever. You've got to keep working it out. I can't go to the gym in January and think never go again until December and think I'm going to have the same body, that I had at the beginning. It's all about working out.
Yeah. That's incredible. That just blew my mind with that. And it makes me want to do it 3 times a day. And it's you answered one of my other questions, which was, because most of them are around 20, 19 to sort of 21 minutes. And I was always wondering why that sort of time frame. But it's also interesting hearing those different stages. And obviously that, we need between 14 and 18 hours of light a day. And, we're lucky here in Brisbane. It's always sunny and it's always warm. So we're pretty fortunate. But other parts of the world definitely.
Where are you at? Are you in New Zealand? Or?
Brisbane, Australia. Brisbane.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're really fortunate with all of that stuff here. But I know you're a busy man, so I'll really respect your time and let you go. But I'd definitely love to have you back on in the future because there's still so much more. But I definitely know our audience will take away so much from everything that you've shared. I've got a greater understanding of it. But where can we, I guess, follow along with your journey and everything that you're continuing to do? I'll put all of the links for those who are listening or watching on YouTube in the show notes, so you can even purchase yourself a headset, because I'd probably recommend it will be one of the best investments you make in yourself.
Yeah, I think you can give them a link where they can actually try out the app for free. I think that would be a good place for them to start. And then, of course, next is if they want to follow us on social media, we have braintaptech.com, which we post a lot there. I have my own Dr. Patrick Porter, but usually everything that's posted there is with Braintap, but sometimes I have different things there because I interview people like yourself and share different stories. Those are on there. We also have our own podcast. If they go to Braintap, we have a Braintap podcast, 2 of them, one that's called Braintap Radio and one that's called Braintap Business Journal. So if somebody's a business person out there, like the gym you went to, we have one where we bring them business tips and how to use. I used to own a franchise company for over 27 years where we used to use this technology in our franchise. So I help business owners, build their business through that podcast, giving them tips and things like that. And then we just started a new one where we're interviewing Braintap users because we have a lot of users now. We're in 120 countries and people want to share their stories. So I started one called Brain Hack. And we're interviewing people, and that would be one that might be interesting for us to interview you on, just to have your experience, because we're sharing that with people. One of the biggest things, like what you're doing is so great, is people think stress is normal. Stress is not normal. It's normal, but we should also have calm and relaxation, just like working out. When we work with our Olympic athletes or our pro athletes, we find their problem never is training. They're never not training enough. They're not recovering enough. Our body needs that recovery time. And so we really want to get the body into that parasympathetic state or that thriving brain state so it can recover and give you the best life now. And that's really what Braintap does. It helps you sleep better and basically function so your best you can show up every morning instead of, the stressed out you that's wondering what the heck's going on. Because we live in an energy economy now more than anything else. If we can have energy, like if you get up and do something like bulletproof coffee, you're doing that because it's going to give you energy. You're not doing it. I mean, the taste is okay too, but taste, you'd probably rather have 5 scoops of sugar and a bunch of milk and, all those kind of things. But so you're doing things so we can have a better energy, better thought and clarity of thought. And I think some kind of wellness practice should involve some kind of meditation practice. And I think we offer a very simple one for people to use and people will really enjoy it.
Definitely. I can back that up 100%. But thank you so much for your time. I look forward to having you back on in the future.
Well, gents, remember, hit the subscribe button. Please share it on your socials and tag me. I always love getting to hear your key takeaways from the episode. Thank you once again for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachie Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.